laughter in the restaurant was soft, expensive, the kind that echoed through marble walls and crystal chandeliers, a quiet orchestra of privilege. And then came the silence. "Excuse me, sir, ma'am. This area is reserved for members." The waiter's voice sliced through the warmth of conversation. All eyes turned toward the couple standing near the hostess podium, two black figures framed by the golden light, elegance wrapped in simplicity. No designer logos, no bodyguards, no proof of belonging. Isaiah and Amara Kingsley exchanged a look, not of surprise, but of a deep, tired understanding. They'd felt this weight before, but this time it felt heavier. "We made a reservation," Amara said softly, her tone calm, deliberate. Under Kingsley, the hostess scanned her tablet. Her fingers hesitated for half a second, too long. "I'm sorry, there's nothing under that name." She didn't meet Amara's eyes. Isaiah leaned slightly forward. "That's strange. We booked it an hour ago." The manager appeared before they could say another word. A tall man in a pressed suit, carrying the stiff confidence of someone who'd never had to apologize. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just looked. "Sir, this establishment has a dress code," he said, voice dipped in sugar but coated with disdain. "We can't accommodate." Isaiah glanced down at his dark turtleneck and tailored slacks. He'd worn the same outfit when signing a $700 million deal last month. "Is that so?" The manager's lips curved into a polite smile. "You'll find other places in Midtown more casual." A murmur rippled across the dining room. Someone whispered, "They don't belong here." Another giggled, the sound brittle as glass. Amara's breath caught. For a moment, she thought of speaking, of laying out her power like a blade. The private jets, the skyscrapers, the scholarships in her name. But Isaiah's hand found hers, a silent plea, "Not yet." The couple turned away. The marble floor under their feet felt like judgment itself, cold, hard, and unyielding. Outside, Atlanta's night air wrapped around them, warm and humid, heavy with city lights and second chances. Traffic hummed. Somewhere, a street musician played an aching saxophone. Isaiah let out a breath that trembled with restraint. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought we'd outgrown moments like this." Amara smiled, though her eyes glistened. "We didn't outgrow it. We just learned to wear it better." She took his arm. They began to walk, and then it happened. A burst of light washed over them from across the street. A massive digital billboard blinked to life, 15 stories high, cutting through the night like divine irony. The Kingsley Group in bold silver letters. Beneath it, two faces smiled out over the city. Their faces. The billionaire couple who owned half the skyline. The same faces the manager had just turned away. For a heartbeat, the entire street seemed to hold its breath. A valet dropped a set of car keys. Someone gasped. The manager, still framed in the restaurant doorway, stared up, his expression folding in on itself. Confusion, horror, recognition, shame. He stumbled forward. "Wait, wait, Mr. Kingsley." "Mrs. Kingsley, I didn't realize." Isaiah didn't stop walking. His voice was calm, each word sharpened by grace. "That's the problem. You never do until it's too late." Amara turned back once. Her eyes met the manager's across the traffic, two worlds colliding in silence. The billboard behind her glowed brighter, reflecting off the restaurant's polished windows like a mirror of consequence. Inside, the patrons shifted uncomfortably, the laughter now gone. A few reached for their phones. The world was already watching. And if you think this is where their story ends, stay with me, because what comes next will change everything. Sometimes, the real revenge isn't loud. It's legacy. And if you've ever been underestimated, keep listening, because this story is for you. The light from the billboard still shimmered on the puddled asphalt as Isaiah and Amara reached their car, a sleek black Maybach, tinted windows glinting like obsidian mirrors. Neither spoke for several seconds. Only the rhythmic click of Amara's heels filled the silence, steady and deliberate, the sound of control rebuilding itself. Inside the car, the driver turned, uncertain. "Everything all right, Mr. Kingsley?" Isaiah adjusted his cufflinks, his movements precise. "Everything's perfect. Miles, take us home." Amara leaned her head back, staring out the window as the city lights blurred into streaks of gold. She whispered, "Do you remember the first time they told us we didn't belong somewhere?" Isaiah smiled faintly, which time her laugh came soft and bitter. "The tech conference in Silicon Valley. They thought I was the assistant. You were the driver." He nodded. "And they're still licensing our software." Silence lingered, comfortable this time, but beneath it, a storm brewed, not of anger, but of purpose. Amara opened her phone. Notifications exploded across the screen. Tweets, photos, videos of the scene outside the restaurant. The world had seen the moment the Kingsleys were turned away. The internet was already writing its own story. "Let it breathe," Isaiah said quietly. "Don't post anything yet." She looked at him. "You're thinking long game." "I always am." Back inside the restaurant, the manager's voice trembled as he spoke into his phone. "I didn't know." They didn't look like the call cut off before he could finish the sentence he'd regret for the rest of his life. By morning, the story had reached the front page of the Atlanta Ledger. The headline burned across screens. "Billionaire philanthropists denied service in Midtown. Restaurant faces backlash." The internet wasn't kind. Videos of the manager stammering went viral, paired with the billboard footage. Hashtags flooded the digital tide. Hashtag respect is not for sale. Hashtag Kingsley lesson. Hashtag this is America still. Amara watched it unfold over breakfast, not from anger, but fascination. "They'll offer us free dinners and apologies within 24 hours, she said, stirring her tea. Isaiah was already dressed in a charcoal suit, scrolling through an investor report. "We don't need apologies," he murmured. "We need memory. Let them remember this every time they see our name." He paused, setting down his tablet. "How's the foundation doing?" "Applications up by 37%. The scholarship program's gone viral." He smiled. "Good. Then this isn't just a scandal, it's an amplifier." Later that afternoon, Isaiah walked into the Kingsley Tower to 72 stories of glass, steel, and ambition. His reflection greeted him in the elevator doors, split by lines of light. He'd built this, every inch of it, from nothing but grit and sleepless nights. Every time someone told him he wasn't ready, he built something that proved he already was. His assistant, Layla, met him in the penthouse office. "You're trending globally," she said, trying not to sound amused. "And Forbes wants an interview. They're calling it the silent billionaire response." Isaiah's gaze drifted to the skyline. "No interview," he said softly. "Not yet." Layla hesitated. "Then what's the move?" He turned to her with the faintest smile. "Grace." That evening, Amara hosted a quiet dinner at their mansion. No photographers, no reporters, just friends, mentors, and former employees who'd once struggled beside them. The walls were lined with art by young black painters they'd funded. Every corner told a story of defiance turned into beauty. One of the guests, a young chef named Terrence, a graduate of Amara's culinary program, approached her with a hesitant smile. "I saw what happened, ma'am. I just wanted to say, the way you handled it, that's real power." Amara's eyes softened. "Power isn't how loud you get, Terrence. It's how steady you stay when the world gets loud for you." Meanwhile, across town, the restaurant's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The owner, Gregory Lane, sat behind his mahogany desk, drowning in apology emails. He'd built the establishment on exclusivity. Now it was collapsing under exposure. The chef had quit. Reservations were cancelled. Influencers posted boycott videos with millions of views. And then came the call. "Mr. Lane," said a polished voice on speakerphone. "This is Layla Harper, Executive Liaison for the Kingsley Group. Mr. Kingsley would like to schedule a meeting." Gregory froze. "He wants to sue, I assume." Layla smiled through the line. "Actually, he wants to talk about business." When Isaiah hung up, Amara arched an eyebrow. "Business?" He nodded. "People learn faster when there's something to lose, but they remember forever when there's something to build." Amara studied him for a long moment. "You're going to offer him a partnership?" Isaiah's smile was enigmatic. "No, I'm going to offer him redemption." The night deepened. Atlanta pulsed outside their window, neon veins glowing in the dark. Isaiah walked to the balcony, the wind lifting the edge of his jacket. Down below, the restaurant that had refused him sat in shadows, its lights dim, its pride dimmer. He spoke without turning around. "Do you know why I didn't say anything last night?" Amara joined him, her voice a whisper beside the wind. "Because silence cuts deeper than rage." He nodded. "Because silence makes them listen." Below, the massive billboard still shimmered, their faces luminous against the skyline. It wasn't revenge. It was a reminder. "And if you think grace is weakness," Isaiah murmured, "wait until you see what it builds next. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, if you've ever had to prove your worth in rooms that didn't want to see you, keep watching, because what Isaiah and Amara do next will redefine what power truly means. And if you believe respect should never depend on appearance, this story's just getting started. Stay with me, the next move changes everything." Morning light spilled through the penthouse windows like gold poured across marble. The city stretched below towers, traffic, and lives in motion, unaware that a quiet revolution was unfolding above them. Amara stood at the edge of the glass wall, robe draped loosely over her shoulders, phone in hand. Notifications flashed every second. The world couldn't stop talking. News anchors, talk shows, podcasts, all dissecting the Kingsley restaurant incident. The footage was everywhere. The tense exchange, the refusal, and finally, the blinding billboard that had lit up like poetic justice. But it wasn't the humiliation people remembered. It was their composure. "They called it a masterclass in dignity," she said, scrolling. "You know, I didn't even like that restaurant. Too much ego in the seasoning." Isaiah chuckled, buttoning his cufflinks. "Ego doesn't taste good. It just burns slow." Amara turned to face him. "You're trending in 15 countries. Hashtags, interviews, think pieces. Everyone's projecting their pain onto us. It's surreal." Isaiah walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "That's the danger of being a symbol. People don't see you. They see the reflection of their own story in your glass." She smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a reflection worth keeping." By noon, the Kingsley Group boardroom pulsed with tension. Screens displayed global headlines, tweets, and a stock ticker that had just surged 3 points. Executives whispered among themselves as Isaiah entered calm, centered, untouchable. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built empires from grit. "We didn't ask for this spotlight, but it's here, so we're going to use it carefully." A marketing director leaned forward. "Should we issue a statement, sir?" Isaiah shook his head. "No. The moment we speak, it becomes our narrative. Right now, the world's writing it for us, and they're doing it better than any PR firm ever could." A pause. Someone muttered, "So, we just let it play out." He smiled. "No, we guide the current without splashing." Amara entered then, elegance embodied, carrying a stack of printed tweets and news excerpts. "Perception," she said, "is the new currency. And right now, Ours is priceless. Across town, the restaurant that had turned them away looked like a ghost. Half-empty tables, nervous staff. The manager, the same man who'd smiled with contempt just 2 nights ago, stood by the window watching a crowd gather outside. Protesters held signs. Respect is the real dress code. You serve food, not ego. News vans lined the street. Cameras caught everything, every grimace, every sigh. But above it all, towering across the street, was the same massive digital billboard. The Kingsleys' faces, their names, their empire. The very image that now haunted the restaurant's reflection. From inside, the manager could see his own pale face mirrored against Isaiah's confident smile on the screen. He couldn't escape it. His own reflection was now forever fused with theirs. He whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Hours later, Gregory Lane, the restaurant's owner, sat in a board meeting surrounded by panic. "Greg, we've lost half our investors." One shouted, "Do something, apologize." Another pleaded. Greg rubbed his temples. "We'll issue a statement tonight." But before he could finish, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Unknown, Mr. Lane, I believe we should talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Kingsley Tower. IK, asterisk." Greg's hands went cold. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he whispered, "He wants to meet me." The next morning, Greg arrived at Kingsley Tower like a man entering a cathedral. Every step echoed through marble floors and steel columns. The receptionist smiled politely, too politely. "Mr. Lane, Mr. Kingsley will see you now." He entered the executive suite. Isaiah stood by the window, sunlight framing him like a halo of quiet power. "Mr. Lane," Isaiah said, turning with a small smile. "Thank you for coming." Greg swallowed hard. I just wanted to say." Isaiah raised a hand gently. "You don't need to apologize. The world already did that for you." Greg hesitated, searching for words. Then, "Why am I here?" Amara entered, placing a folder on the table between them. "Because we don't believe in endings built on shame. We believe in lessons that grow into legacy." Inside the folder, a proposal. Greg's eyes widened. "You want to buy my restaurant?" Isaiah nodded slowly. "We already own the building. We just want to own the story too." Greg blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely," Amara said. "But not to run it, to rebuild it." Isaiah leaned forward. "We're turning it into a culinary institute for young chefs who will never be turned away again." Greg sat in stunned silence. "You'd do that? After what Isaiah's voice cut through the air, calm and final. "Forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for the world that's still watching." When Greg left the office, he looked up once more at the billboard. The faces still gleamed, not as reminders of his failure, but as symbols of transformation. The story that had begun with humiliation was already morphing into redemption, and the city, restless, divided, alive, was watching in awe. Amara turned to Isaiah as the elevator doors closed. "You really think he'll change?" Isaiah smiled. He already did. The moment he saw himself in the glass. That night, social media lit up again, but this time, differently. A new post from the Kingsley Foundation went viral. "We're proud to announce the launch of the Legacy Table, a culinary institute built where bias once stood. Every meal tells a story. This one begins with grace." Millions shared it. Some cried, others reflected, and thousands commented with a single phrase that began trending by dawn. "I saw myself in the glass." If you've ever faced judgment and chose grace instead of anger, you know exactly what this moment feels like. And if you think this story has reached its highest point, stay with me. Because the next turn, when the world tries to turn their kindness into controversy, will test what legacy really means. What would you have done in their place? Drop your thoughts below, Your perspective might just become the next reflection in the glass. Before the billboards, before the towers, before the cameras and the silence that spoke louder than 1,000 press releases, there was a small apartment in South Atlanta. One room, one mattress, one dream too heavy for the ceiling to contain. Amara Kingsley used to fall asleep listening to the hum of passing trains, pretending it was applause. Every morning, before the city woke, he'd lace his shoes, worn thin, duct-taped at the edges, and run to the public library. That was his first office. The cracked wooden table by the window was where the Kingsley empire began. Across from him, a young woman with fire in her eyes and paint under her nails would sketch on napkins, scribbling designs between sips of burnt coffee. Amara Lewis, art student, dreamer, the girl who believed color could change a room, a city, a life. They didn't have much, but they had vision, and that was enough. Years later, when Amara saw Isaiah's old shoes framed behind glass in the Kingsley Foundation lobby, she smiled through tears. "You kept them," she'd said softly. Isaiah had shrugged. "They're my first investors." He wasn't joking. In the early days, nobody opened doors for them. Every investor saw their skin before their skill. Every rejection came with a polite smile and the same coded phrase, "You're just not the right fit." But that phrase became their battle cry. They started Kingsley Innovations from the trunk of a borrowed car, a startup that turned sustainable materials into smart construction tech. They didn't have backing, but they had each other. When the banks said no, Amara sold her paintings. When the clients disappeared, Isaiah wrote proposals through the night until his fingers cramped. When the city doubted them, they built something the city couldn't ignore. Their first major contract, a $2 million deal to retrofit affordable housing with green technology, nearly broke them. But when it succeeded, the city of Atlanta didn't just notice, it bowed. That's when the shift began, from startup dreamers to silent giants. Now, standing in the heart of Kingsley Tower, Amara looked out at the skyline, every building glowing like a verse of their story. "They see the glass," she said quietly, "but they don't see the cracks it took to build it." Isaiah joined her, resting a hand on her shoulder. Legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about what survives when memory fades. Amara turned toward him. "And what do you want to survive?" He paused. "Grace, power, dignity, and truth." Across the room, Layla entered with a tablet. "The media's eating up the legacy table announcement," she said. "They're calling you the most influential couple in the country right now." Isaiah sighed. "Influence is temporary. Integrity isn't." Layla hesitated. "Still, the pressure's building. People are demanding that you take a public stance about race, class, privilege, about everything." Amara spoke before Isaiah could. "We don't perform pain for applause." Layla nodded. "Understood." When she left, the room fell silent again, the kind of silence only power can afford. That night, as rain tapped softly against the glass walls, Amara walked into her art studio. The space smelled of turpentine and midnight. On one canvas, she'd painted two silhouettes facing a window, one dark, one light, both looking out toward the city. She dipped her brush in gold, tracing faint halos over their heads. Isaiah entered quietly, watching her. "That one's new." "Not really," she said. "It's the first painting I ever made of us. I just never finished it." He stepped closer. "Why now?" "Because the world's watching us again," she whispered. "And I want them to see that power isn't about owning glass towers. It's about surviving what tried to shatter you." Her brush stilled. "Do you ever get tired of proving we belong?" Isaiah exhaled slowly. "Every day. But then, I remember, we're not proving it anymore. We're teaching it across town." The restaurant owner, Greg Lane, watched the Kingsley Foundation announcement on TV. His own name trended beneath theirs. the man who'd turned away grace and got mercy in return. He sat alone in the dark, whispering to himself, "They gave me a chance to rebuild. I won't waste it." He looked down at the blueprints on his table, plans for the new culinary institute. The Kingsleys had told him he could stay on as director if he committed to their vision. It terrified him, but it also freed him. Maybe legacy wasn't about owning. Maybe it was about transforming. Weeks passed, construction began. Media coverage shifted from scandal to inspiration. The Kingsley effect, one journalist called it, the way they turned humiliation into movement, prejudice into progress. And yet, not everyone celebrated them. A whisper campaign began online that their grace was calculated, that their wealth made them disconnected, that their forgiveness was a PR stunt. Isaiah read the comments late one night. Billionaires can't be victims. They planned it. They're just buying sainthood. He closed his laptop. Amara was painting again, humming softly. "Don't let it touch you," she said without looking up. "It doesn't," he replied. "But I wonder, how do you prove sincerity to people who only believe in spectacle?" She turned to him, brush in hand. "You don't. You just keep building. The world will always test the weight of your legacy. You just make sure it doesn't crack under their questions." He smiled faintly. "You sound like the quote they'll carve on our building one day." She smirked. "Only if you pick the font." They both laughed, a rare, quiet moment. Outside, the rain stopped. The city glowed clean, alive, reborn. If you've ever worked twice as hard to earn half the respect, you know this part of the story. You know the quiet fight. You know the beauty in the rebuild. And if you think their calm is unshakable, wait until you see what happens when the world's admiration turns into attack. Because power built from pain always attracts storms. What does legacy mean to you? Drop it below. Your story might be more connected to theirs than you think. It started with one tweet. A photo of Isaiah and Amara stepping out of their Maybach, smiling, dressed in quiet power. The caption read, "How can billionaires talk about humility when they live like gods?" Within an hour, it had 50,000 retweets. By morning, 5 million. The same faces once worshipped as symbols of grace were now being dissected, pixel by pixel, sentence by sentence. News anchors debated their sincerity. Think pieces questioned their motives. Activists accused them of capitalizing on victimhood. It was as if America had looked into a mirror and didn't like what it saw. Amara stood in front of that mirror herself, the kind made of headlines and hashtags. On every screen in her office, her own image stared back, edited, cropped, captioned. She felt it. The public's hunger for contradiction, the need to find flaws in what should have been triumph. "They built us up too fast," she said softly. "Now they're bored." And boredom turns to bloodlust. Isaiah entered quietly, his expression unreadable. "The same people who cheered when we stayed silent now want us to scream." Amara turned to him. "Maybe we should." He shook his head. "No. The loudest thing we can do is keep moving." Her eyes searched his. "And if they twist even that, then let them," he said, voice low, "because our reflection doesn't belong to them." Outside Kingsley Tower, the protests began. Some held signs that praised them, grace over hate. Others carried signs that cursed them, eat the rich. The air buzzed with irony. The same story that had begun as a parable about prejudice had now turned into a debate about privilege. Greg Lane, the once disgraced restaurant owner, watched the chaos from the construction site that was becoming the legacy table. His workers painted walls. Journalists shouted questions. He thought about all the ways perception shapes truth. When he saw Isaiah walking toward him calm, amid the noise, Greg straightened. "Mr. Kingsley," he said, "the public's turning. They're saying this whole project's a cover-up." Isaiah looked around at the half-built kitchen, the polished counters, the gleaming stoves. Let them talk. When it opens, truth will cook itself. Greg frowned. You're not worried? Isaiah smiled faintly. Worry never built anything worth remembering. But not everyone in their circle shared that calm. In the boardroom that afternoon, the tension was thick. Their PR chief, Melanie Torres, slammed a folder onto the table. We need to control the narrative. They're calling you out of touch. You can't fight silence with silence forever. Amara folded her hands. You think speaking would change their hearts? Melanie sighed. Not their hearts, their headlines. Isaiah leaned back, gaze steady. Headlines don't scare us. History remembers differently. But even as he said it, a flicker of fatigue crossed his eyes. The weight of legacy was starting to feel like armor too heavy to lift. That night, Isaiah walked the streets of Atlanta alone. No bodyguards, no press, just the hum of streetlights and memory. He passed the library where he used to study, the church where they'd volunteered, the block where they'd once dreamed of owning a single building. Now he owned half the skyline. And yet, somehow, he felt small again. He sat on a bench outside the library and watched a young man scrolling on his phone. On the screen, a clip of Isaiah himself, taken out of context, edited to look arrogant. The young man muttered, "Man, I thought he was different." Isaiah looked away, his heart tightening. He wanted to say something, to explain, but what would it change? People believed the story they needed, not the truth that hurt. Back home, Amara couldn't sleep. She stood by her canvas, painting over the gold halos she'd once given their silhouettes. In their place, she brushed dark storms, greys and violets bleeding together. Isaiah entered quietly. "Can't rest." She didn't turn. "How do you keep building when the world's tearing at your foundation?" He walked closer. "You build deeper." She set the brush down. "You make it sound easy. It's not," he said. "But remember, this isn't about them. This is about the ones watching who need to know that grace doesn't break under pressure." Amara finally faced him, tears threatening to spill. "Then why does it hurt so much to be the example?" Isaiah pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Because we're still human, and humanity is the price of greatness." The next morning, the storm reached full force. Talk shows called them hypocrites. Commentators debated their marriage, their motives, their faith. One headline read, "The Kingsley Myth, America's favorite couple or calculated brand." It stung. But then, something unexpected happened. Under that same article, thousands of comments began to appear, not from fans, but from people whose lives they'd touched. A scholarship recipient wrote, "They paid for my engineering degree when nobody else would. I'm building solar panels because of them." A single mother wrote, "The Kingsley Foundation fed my kids when I couldn't. Don't tell me they don't care." A former employee wrote, "They fired me once with kindness, and they rehired me when I was ready." That's who they are. The noise didn't stop, but the truth began to hum beneath it. Quiet, steady, undeniable. Amara watched it unfold online and whispered, "The world is its own mirror. It sees what it's ready to face." Isaiah nodded. "And maybe, just maybe, it's starting to see itself clearly again." She smiled through exhaustion. "Then maybe we're doing something right." He smiled back. "Maybe we always were." If you've ever been misunderstood while doing right, if you've ever faced a world that questions your motives more than your message, you know this part of the story. And if you think the storm is over, stay with me. Because next, one betrayal will cut closer than any headline, and it won't come from a stranger. But before we move forward, what do you see when you look in America's mirror? Drop it below. Your reflection might be truer than you think. The morning broke heavy, grey, and full of noise. News trucks lined the block again, their antennas piercing the skyline like bayonets. The world had turned the Kingsley's grace into spectacle, and now it wanted blood. But Isaiah and Amara were not hiding. They walked together, hand in hand, toward the building that once refused them, now wrapped in scaffolding and promise. The sign above the door had been taken down. Soon, it would be replaced with 3 new words that carried the weight of redemption. The legacy table. Workers paused as they passed. Cameras flashed. The same marble steps that had humiliated them months ago now felt like a stage for a different kind of power. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. Inside, the smell of new beginnings filled the air. Wet paint, sawdust, and hope. Greg Lane stood by the doorway, hard hat tucked under his arm. He still couldn't meet their eyes for long. "We're on schedule," he said, voice low. "The classrooms are almost done. We should be ready by next month." Amara smiled softly. "You've done well, Greg," he nodded. "Trying to earn the second chance I didn't deserve." Isaiah studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "You don't earn grace. You grow into it." Greg swallowed, his eyes glistening. "Then I'll keep growing." The first reporters arrived before noon. Microphones waited like vultures. "Mr. Kingsley, Mrs. Kingsley, how do you respond to the claims that this school is a PR stunt? Is forgiveness profitable now? Are you using philanthropy to protect your image?" Isaiah stopped, his calm slicing through the chaos. "If doing good makes you question someone's motives, maybe the problem isn't the act. Maybe it's what the mirror shows you." The reporters fell silent. Cameras rolled. The clip would go viral within hours, his words becoming the newest quote on every timeline. Inside, Amara walked through the classroom's rows of stainless steel counters, bright tiles, sunlight spilling through tall windows. She ran her hand across a counter, imagining the laughter, the mess, the hunger of dreams being fed. "This isn't about us," she murmured. "It's about the ones who will never be turned away again." Isaiah nodded. "Let them learn to cook, not for money, but for meaning." But even as the building rose, something inside their empire began to crack. That evening, Layla Harper, their assistant and confidant, stood in her office, staring at her computer. An email sat open on her screen. Subject line, "Confidential Media Inquiry." A journalist had offered her a fortune and anonymity in exchange for access to private documents. Nothing criminal, nothing scandalous. Just proof that the Kingsleys were, in fact, human, flawed, contradictory, real. Layla's fingers trembled above the keyboard. She owed them everything. But she also felt invisible, living in their shadow, running their empire, but never being seen. Her cursor hovered over reply. Then she closed her eyes and clicked send. By dawn, a storm was brewing again. The leaked emails weren't explosive, just private conversations. Amara expressing exhaustion. Isaiah venting about the burden of perfection. But the media twisted them, framing the couple as disillusioned, performative, divided. Headlines screamed betrayal. The Kingsleys exposed. Private emails revealed the truth. The internet went feral. People dissected every line, every sigh, every comma. And Layla, the source, watched in silence, guilt clawing her throat. She hadn't meant to destroy them. She just wanted to be heard. Isaiah sat at the edge of their penthouse balcony, the city glowing beneath him like liquid steel. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls, texts, statements to approve. He ignored them all. Amara joined him, barefoot, robe flowing like shadow. "It was Layla," she said quietly. "We confirmed it." He didn't move. How much did she sell? Not money, attention. That hurt more. He finally turned to her. "Do we fire her?" Amara hesitated. "We could, but maybe we show her the same grace we gave Greg." Isaiah laughed once, hollow. So now grace is policy. No, she said gently. It's protection. For us. He looked at her, torn between fury and understanding. You think she deserves forgiveness? Amara's voice softened. I think if we lose compassion when it's hardest to give, then everything we built means nothing. The next day, they called Layla into the office. She entered trembling, expecting destruction. Isaiah looked at her for a long time. Then, simply, why? Tears fell before she could answer. I was tired of being the shadow to your sunlight. Amara stepped closer. Layla, the shadow isn't punishment. It's proof there's light nearby. The younger woman broke down. I'm so sorry, Isaiah exhaled slowly. You betrayed us. But you reminded us too. Perfection is poison. We're not symbols. We're people. He extended his hand. Come back when you remember why you started with us. Until then, go make your own light. Layla nodded, crying, and left. That night, the Kingsleys posted a single message to their millions of followers. We make mistakes. We get tired. We hurt. But we still choose grace. Because grace isn't for the perfect. It's for the trying. Within hours, it became the most shared post of the year. Celebrities, leaders, ordinary people, all repeating it. For a moment, the noise softened. Humanity had cracked through perfection, and people saw themselves again. The next morning, Greg called Isaiah. You're trending again, but this time, it's different. They're saying you taught the world what forgiveness looks like in real time. Isaiah smiled faintly. We didn't teach it, Greg. We just lived it out loud. Across the street, the billboard changed again. This time it didn't show their faces, only the words, grace is greater than pride, and beneath it, a smaller line that made the whole city stop and read. The Kingsley Foundation. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted and still found the courage to forgive, you know the power that lives in this part of the story. And if you think this is the Kingsleys' redemption arc, stay close, because the next chapter, when they turn forgiveness into empire, will redefine what legacy looks like when love leads the boardroom. Before we go on, what would you have done with Layla? Fire her or forgive her? Drop your truth below. Every answer says something about the legacy you're building, too. It began at 3:47 a.m. The city slept, but the world was about to wake up to a sentence that would echo across continents. Isaiah sat alone in his office, lights dim, skyline shimmering below like spilled stars. The pain of betrayal had dulled into something else now, purpose. He opened his phone, the blank tweet window glowing like an empty canvas. He thought of everything, the restaurant, the humiliation, the forgiveness, the noise. Then he typed, slowly, deliberately, respect isn't for sale. It's taught, IK. He pressed post. For a moment, there was silence. Then, like thunder rolling through the digital sky, the world erupted. By dawn, the tweet had crossed oceans. Presidents, actors, activists, pastors, and CEOs retweeted it with their own reflections. Some called it a sermon. Others called it a revolution. Within 24 hours, the phrase had become a movement. Hashtags bloomed like wildfire. Hashtag respect is taught. Hashtag the Kingsley way. Hashtag grace is power. Newspapers printed the tweet as headlines. Schools quoted it in assemblies. Talk shows debated its meaning. But for Isaiah and Amara, it wasn't a brand, it was a truth carved from blood and silence. When Amara awoke, she found him standing on the balcony, the sunrise washing him in gold. You couldn't sleep again? She asked softly. Isaiah turned, eyes calm. No, but maybe the world needed to wake up before I did. She smiled faintly, scrolling through her own notifications. They're calling it the new creed of leadership. He chuckled. Funny. It's just what my grandmother used to tell me every Sunday. What was that? He turned back toward the horizon. You can't buy respect from the world. You earn it when no one's watching. By afternoon, the Kingsley Foundation's phone lines crashed. Schools, non-profits, and corporations were requesting partnerships, funding, and guidance to teach respect leadership. A major news outlet called it the Kingsley Doctrine. Amara watched as their message, once born from pain, began shaping policies, classrooms, and boardrooms. But something about it unsettled her. "Isaiah," she said quietly, "this is growing faster than us. Are we ready to lead a movement?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "We didn't start a movement. We started a mirror. People just finally like what they see in it. But mirrors can shatter," she whispered. He smiled softly. "Then we'll build from the pieces." Later that week, the Kingsleys were invited to the Global Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. The world's elite sat in the audience: politicians, business moguls, activists. Cameras streamed live to millions. Isaiah stepped up to the podium, silence thick around him. He didn't have notes. He didn't need them. "When we were thrown out of that restaurant," he began, "we could have shouted. We could have sued. But we chose silence. Because silence isn't weakness. It's space. And in that space, grace was born." He paused. Every eye was on him. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It exposes it and dares it to become better. The room erupted in applause. But Isaiah didn't smile. His eyes found Amara in the front row. She was proud, but she was also wary, because she knew something the crowd didn't. Behind every movement, there's a price. Outside the summit, a different crowd gathered. Protesters against some inspired, some enraged. One sign read, "Grace doesn't pay rent." Another, "Teach respect, but feed the poor." And they weren't wrong. Amara met with the foundation board that night, frustration bubbling. "We've become a symbol, Isaiah. But symbols can't solve hunger. Movements don't build houses." He listened quietly. "People need jobs, not quotes." He finally spoke. "Then we'll give them both." Within weeks, the Kingsley Foundation launched a program called the Table Project. It combined job training, scholarships, and leadership mentoring under one mantra: everyone deserves a seat. It spread like wildfire, again Atlanta, Chicago, Lagos, London. People lined up to join. Celebrities donated. Governments reached out. Amara stood before the first class of recruits in the brand new Legacy Table Institute. Sunlight streaming across the polished counters. "You're not here to serve food," she told them. "You're here to serve futures." The students erupted in applause. Some cried. Others filmed her words, spreading them across social media until millions watched and whispered the same phrase. Serve futures. Meanwhile, Greg Lane, the man who once turned them away, on stage beside Isaiah at the opening ceremony. His voice cracked as he addressed the crowd. "I was the man who said they didn't belong here," he admitted. "Now I'm teaching others how to belong." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras captured his tears. And in that moment, the story came full circle, not as revenge, but resurrection. That night, the Kingsleys returned home to find their front gates lined with candles, photos, and handwritten letters from strangers. A note pinned to the gate caught Amara's eye. It read, "You didn't just forgive, you showed us how." She held it to her chest. "They're listening," she whispered. Isaiah smiled. "No, they're learning, but not everyone's celebrated." Behind the scenes, corporations began using #respect as taught as marketing. Politicians quoted it for clout. The message that once burned with truth was becoming diluted, commercialized. Amara felt it slipping away. "They're turning grace into merchandise," she said bitterly one evening. Isaiah sighed. "The world always profits from what it doesn't understand. So what do we do?" He looked out at the skyline. "We take it back." The next morning, Isaiah posted again. "If they sell our message, let them. Because you can't trademark truth. The world doesn't need our name. It needs our example. The tweet hit harder than the first. It reminded everyone what the movement was really about. Not the Kingsleys, but the mirror they'd handed the world. And for the first time, both haters and believers agreed on something. They had changed the conversation. If you've ever had your truth stolen, twisted, or sold, and still found the strength to live it louder, this part of the story is for you. And if you think the Kingsleys' empire can grow without enemies, stay close, because the next storm won't come from the outside. It'll rise from within. Grace built the brand, but power, real power, will test it. Tell me in the comments, would you rather be respected or understood? Your answer might say everything about the kingdom you're building. Rain fell like secrets that night. Quiet, deliberate, unrelenting. Isaiah stood alone at the window of his office, watching the storm roll across the Atlanta skyline. Lightning flashed, briefly reflecting his face in the glass, half shadow, half light. Behind him, the city's hum pulsed with everything he'd built. The towers, the foundation, the movement, the brand. And yet, something about the silence inside that office felt wrong. The door opened. Amara stepped in, her heels echoing softly. "He's here." Isaiah turned slowly. "Show him in." Moments later, the elevator doors parted, and a man stepped out, tall, confident, wrapped in a charcoal suit that screamed wealth, the way perfume screams memory. His name was Dominic Price, hedge fund billionaire, former ally, now a rival with too much influence and too little conscience. They had history. Isaiah knew it the moment he saw him smile. "Isaiah Kingsley," Dominic said, extending a hand. "The man who taught the world how to forgive." Isaiah shook it, his expression unreadable. Dominic Price, the man who taught the world how to forget. A subtle grin flickered across Dominic's lips. Touché. Amara motioned toward the table. "Please, sit." Dominic didn't. He walked to the glass wall, surveying the storm outside. "You've built quite a temple here," he said. "But temples fall when worship turns to profit." Isaiah folded his hands. "You didn't come here to philosophize." Dominic turned, eyes sharp. "No, I came to offer you $10 billion. The room went silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. He laid the proposal on the table, a merger that would give the Kingsley Group global reach. Africa, Asia, Europe. Dominic's empire could make their foundation unstoppable. But there was a catch. Dominic's smile never wavered. "I admire your message, Isaiah, but grace doesn't scale. It needs power. My kind of power." Amara's voice cut through the air like glass. "You mean control?" He shrugged. "Control is just discipline with better PR." Isaiah leaned forward. "You want to buy our movement?" "I want to multiply it," Dominic corrected, "and make sure it doesn't fade when the next scandal hits." Isaiah stared at him. "You think grace is a commodity?" Dominic smiled. "Everything is. You just haven't priced it yet." Amara rose, crossing her arms. "Dominic, you were there when we started. You know what this means to us." "I do," he said softly, "which is why I'm offering you protection. You've become a brand, Amara, and brands break under expectation." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "You sound like every man who told us to sell instead of build." Dominic smirked. "And yet you're still sitting at my table." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. When Dominic finally left, the room felt colder. Amara turned to Isaiah. "You're not considering it, are you?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted back to the storm outside. $10 billion. Access to every continent, every resource. She stepped closer. At what cost? He turned to her. "What if this is how we take our message global? What if he's right?" Amara's voice broke. "Then what are we teaching the world? That grace has a price tag." Isaiah looked down. Maybe the world only listens when money speaks. She shook her head. No, the world listens when truth refuses to sell. Her words hung between them, heavy, holy, unanswerable. Later that night, Isaiah couldn't sleep. He walked the empty halls of Kingsley Tower, the sound of his footsteps echoing against marble and memory. He passed the framed photographs on the walls, the foundation's first scholarship recipients, the children they'd helped, the first building they'd bought together. Each image reminded him of who they were before the spotlight burned their faces into symbols. He stopped at one picture, the two of them standing in front of their first office, paint still wet on the sign. They looked young, hungry, untouched by the world's noise. He whispered to himself, "Have we changed that much?" Meanwhile, in her art studio, Amara stood before a new canvas, a storm painted in deep indigo and gold. In the center, two hands reached for each other, separated by lightning. Layla, recently returned after her fall from grace, stepped into the room quietly. "You're painting again." Amara didn't turn. "It's the only thing that tells the truth when words lie." Layla hesitated. "You heard about Dominic's offer?" Amara nodded. "He's trying to buy faith." Layla swallowed. "He can't." Amara smiled faintly. "Men like him don't buy faith. They rent it until it breaks." The next morning, Isaiah and Amara stood side by side at the window, watching the rain lift from the city. "Do you know what I realized?" Isaiah said softly. "What?" He pointed at the skyline, their skyline. "Every tower here used to belong to someone who thought power was permanent. Now they carry new names. Ours, the names of the ones who believed harder." Amara's voice was almost a whisper. "So what do we do with Dominic's offer?" Isaiah smiled faintly. "We remind him that grace doesn't sign contracts." That afternoon, they met Dominic one final time. Cameras waited outside, though none were invited in. Isaiah slid the contract back across the table. "We're not for sale." Dominic leaned back. "You could have changed the world." Isaiah met his gaze. "We already are, just not your way." Dominic laughed softly. "Then may your faith survive the market." As he walked away, Amara called after him. "Dominic," he stopped. "You said grace doesn't scale. Watch us prove you wrong." He smiled, almost respectfully. "Then I'll see you at the top, or on the other side of it." And then he was gone. That night, Isaiah posted again. "The world will always try to buy what it doesn't understand. Protect your soul from the highest bidder." The post exploded millions of shares, millions of reflections. But for Isaiah and Amara, it wasn't victory. It was a vow. They were no longer just building towers. They were building truth, brick by brick, betrayal by betrayal. If you've ever turned down something that glittered because your peace mattered more, this part of their story is yours. And if you think the Kingsleys have finally escaped the cost of conviction, don't blink, because the next betrayal won't come from an enemy. It'll come from love itself. Would you sell your peace for power? Tell me below, because your answer might just reveal your empire's foundation. The mansion was quiet that night, too quiet for two people who had once built an empire from noise. Outside, the storm had passed, but the tension between Isaiah and Amara still hung heavy in the air. The kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from things left unsaid. Amara sat in her studio, surrounded by canvases, some finished, others raw, all bleeding color. A single lamp cast gold over her face, softening the exhaustion in her eyes. She dipped her brush into deep crimson, dragging it across a blank canvas like she was cutting open her thoughts. When Isaiah appeared in the doorway, she didn't turn. "You're not sleeping again," he said softly. Her brush paused. "Neither are you." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You've been painting every night for weeks." "I'm trying to remember who I was before all this," she said. "Before hashtags, before headlines, before I had to be perfect." Isaiah's voice broke a little. You think I don't ask myself the same thing? She turned then, eyes glassy, brush trembling. Do you? He stepped closer. Every night, Amara set the brush down and faced him fully. Then tell me, Isaiah, when did our mission become our mask? He sat across from her, the distance between them, both physical and spiritual. When we forgave Greg, she continued, I felt free. When we forgave Layla, I felt proud. But now, I feel hollow. Like we've been giving the world grace we can't even give each other. Isaiah swallowed hard. That's not fair. It's true, she said. We've been so busy saving the world, we stopped seeing the cracks in us. He looked away, pain flickering across his face. You think I don't notice the distance? I do. I just don't know how to fix it without breaking something else. Her voice softened. Then maybe it's time to let something break. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of rainwater dripping from the roof filled the silence, slow, rhythmic, like a metronome for memory. Finally, Isaiah whispered, Do you ever wonder if we're still in love with each other, or just in love with the empire we built together? Amara's eyes welled. Don't do that. He leaned forward. I'm serious. She shook her head. Love doesn't vanish, Isaiah. It gets buried under the weight of everything we've built. We just need to dig it back out. He smiled sadly. Then let's start digging. The next morning, Amara didn't go to the office. Instead, she visited the legacy table. The building was finally complete. Warm lights, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. Students in crisp aprons cooked, laughed, and plated their dreams. Greg Lane spotted her from across the room. Mrs. Kingsley, didn't expect to see you today. She smiled. I needed to remember why we started this. Greg nodded. I think I forget that sometimes too. He led her into the kitchen, where a teenage girl named Renee was chopping vegetables with quiet focus. Greg introduced her. She was homeless last year, Greg said. Now she's running this kitchen like a general. Amara smiled. What made you join? Renee looked up shyly. Because you forgave him, she said, nodding toward Greg. If someone like you can do that, maybe people like me can start again too. Amara's throat tightened. In that moment, she saw the truth she'd been missing. Their legacy wasn't about towers or movements or wealth. It was about people, faces, stories. When she left, she called Isaiah. Come here, she said. You need to see this. He arrived an hour later. The students froze when they saw him. The man whose name was carved into the marble outside. But Isaiah waved off the formalities. He walked through the kitchen quietly, watching the young chefs work, laugh, and learn. Greg approached him cautiously. You did this, he said. Isaiah shook his head. No, you did. Greg hesitated. You gave me grace. Isaiah looked around the room. Grace only matters when it multiplies. He turned to Amara, standing at the far end of the kitchen, smiling softly. Their eyes met. For the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't felt since the early days. Gratitude. That night, back at the mansion, Isaiah found Amara on the balcony, the city lights dancing in her eyes. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. You were right, he whispered. About what? We forgot why we started. It wasn't to be seen. It was to make seeing possible. She leaned back against him. You think we can find us again? He smiled. We already are. Later, he took out his phone. Another post. Simple, quiet, intentional. Redemption isn't a finish line. It's a reflection of who we become after the storm. The world ate it up. But for once, the Kingsleys didn't care. They didn't need applause. They had peace. Weeks passed, the foundation thrived. Layla ran new programs with humility. Greg became a mentor to other business owners seeking redemption. And Isaiah and Amara began rebuilding, not their empire, but their unspoken act of kindness at a time. Dinner without phones, walks without cameras, laughter without control. Amara started painting again, this time not storms, but dawns. On her newest canvas, she painted two hands clasped beneath a rising sun, their shadows forming the shape of wings. When Isaiah saw it, he smiled. "What's it called?" She turned to him. "Forgiveness." He looked at her, heart full. "You think we've earned it?" "No," she said softly. "We've lived it. If you've ever had to rebuild something sacred, a relationship, a dream, a sense of self, you know this part of the story. You know what it means to choose healing when hurt would be easier. And if you think their story ends with peace, don't look away yet. Because sometimes peace isn't the end. It's the pause before destiny calls again. But before we go on, tell me this. Do you believe forgiveness can save love, or just soften its memory? Drop your truth below. Someone out there might need it tonight. Atlanta glowed that evening, not from the sun, but from something deeper, almost spiritual. Thousands gathered downtown, the air thick with warmth and memory. Banners fluttered on every street lamp, each one marked with the same inscription, the legacy table, from humiliation to hope. At the center of it all stood the building, once a symbol of exclusion, now reborn in light. Its glass facade shimmered like water, reflecting every color of the crowd that had come to witness history. Inside, the hum of laughter and camera shutters mixed with the clink of champagne glasses. Chefs in crisp white coats moved like poetry in motion, plating dishes inspired by struggle and resilience. Every plate told a story, and every story led back to two people standing hand in hand on the marble steps. Isaiah and Amara Kingsley. Their eyes met as they stepped up to the podium. The world hushed. Even the wind seemed to pause. Amara spoke first. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of every trial they'd survived. 2 years ago, she began, we walked into this building as customers and were told we didn't belong. Tonight, we walk in as builders, and we open the doors so no one else ever hears those words again. The crowd erupted in applause. Tears flowed freely. Isaiah stepped forward next. He didn't bring notes, didn't look at the teleprompter. He just looked out at the faces before him. Every color, every story, every reflection of their journey. When people tried to make us angry, he said, we gave them grace. When they tried to shame us, we gave them forgiveness. And when the world tried to define us by pain, we gave it purpose. He paused, the crowd hanging on every word. This building isn't about food, he continued. It's about nourishment, of dreams, of dignity, of second chances. He turned to Greg Lane, standing in the front row beside his students. And it's about redemption, because the same man who once shut the door on us is now the man who opens it for others. Greg's eyes brimmed with tears as the audience rose to its feet, clapping, cheering, shouting his name. When the applause faded, Amara unveiled a bronze plaque by the front door. The letters gleamed under the spotlights. From humiliation to hope, where respect was reborn. Dedicated by Isaiah and Amara Kingsley. The crowd went still, reverent. Cameras flashed, but even through the frenzy, the moment felt sacred. Isaiah whispered to Amara, we did it. She squeezed his hand. No, she said softly. We're still doing it. Inside, the dinner began, the first ever legacy gala. The menu was written like a poem. The struggle, the rise, the rebuild, the reflection. Each dish told a part of their story. The final course was titled Grace. Reporters described the evening as a sermon served on porcelain, but for Isaiah and Amara, it wasn't about spectacle. It was about stillness, about giving the world a mirror and asking it to look deeper. As guests mingled, Amara found a quiet corner overlooking the city. The skyline twinkled below, every tower, a testament to nights they'd almost given up. Isaiah joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To us," he said. She smiled. "To everyone who doubted us." He chuckled. "That's a longer list." She clinked her glass against his. "Then here's to the list, because without them, there'd be no us." Later that night, when the music faded and the cameras were packed away, the couple returned to the empty hall. The smell of lavender candles lingered in the air. Amara walked toward the plaque again, tracing the engraved words with her fingers. "From humiliation to hope," she whispered. "Do you think it really ends here?" Isaiah stepped beside her. "It never ends. Legacy doesn't stop with us, it multiplies through them." He looked around the room, at the tables where strangers had broken bread together, at the light reflecting through the glass, at the kitchen doors still swinging with life. "This isn't a monument," he said quietly. "It's a seed." Outside, a reporter caught them just as they were leaving. "Mr. Kingsley," she called out, "what does success look like to you now?" Isaiah smiled. "Success isn't about how high you climb. It's about who still has a seat when you reach the top." "And what about you, Mrs. Kingsley?" Amara turned, her gold gown catching the light. "Success is when your story becomes someone else's permission slip." The clip would go viral by morning, but in that moment, it was just truth, unpolished, unforgettable. Weeks later, the movement they sparked reached schools, prisons, corporate offices, and churches. Murals of the Kingsleys appeared in cities across America, not as idols, but as symbols of grace turned into action. And every day, students walked into the legacy table, young, old, rich, poor, and saw the words on the wall. "Respect isn't for sale, it's taught." Some came to learn cooking, others came to learn forgiveness, but all left with something heavier than knowledge: worth. One morning, long after the frenzy faded, Isaiah and Amara sat on a park bench, overlooking the skyline. The same skyline that once refused them, now carried their name in lights. Isaiah said softly, "You ever think about that night, the restaurant, the humiliation, the walk down the street?" Amara smiled faintly. "Every time I see that building. But now, when I think of it, I don't feel anger anymore. Just gratitude, gratitude." She nodded. "Because without that moment, we wouldn't have found our purpose. We wouldn't have found this." Isaiah looked at her, warmth softening the lines of his face. "You think we've done enough?" Amara smiled. "Enough for this lifetime, maybe, but not for the next generation." He laughed quietly. "Then let's keep building." And as the morning light bathed the city, their city, the camera of the world slowly pulled back. The towers gleamed. The legacy table stood tall. The billboard above it glowed one final message: power built from pain, grace built from power, legacy built from both. Their faces appeared side by side, not as icons, but as reminders that sometimes the most beautiful revenge is redemption. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or disrespected, remember this: you don't have to fight to be seen. You build something so undeniable that the world has no choice but to look up. And if this story moved you, share it, because the next person who reads it might be standing outside their own restaurant, waiting to realize that their story isn't over. It's only just beginning.